Am I totally evil? Well, I guess let's talk about it. Welcome to Theology Matters. One of the primary doctrines of Calvinism, actually the fundamental doctrines, is total depravity. Calvinists teach that man is unable to respond to the gospel because they are born totally depraved. That is, their whole propensity is bent toward sin. Matt Slick, a prominent Calvinist, says this: total depravity, also known as total inability, man is completely touched, affected by sin, and all that he is in nature. He is completely fallen. According to Matt Slick on Calm.org, he says man is completely fallen. All that he is touched by sin, and he can't do anything good. Listen to what he says. Furthermore, this total depravity means that the unregenerate will not, of their own free will, choose to receive Christ because they are enslaved to sin. See, these people cannot, of their own free will, come to God because they're bent toward evil. They're enslaved to sin. They cannot receive spiritual things and can do no good, Matt says. They have free will to choose, but they will freely choose to do what is contrary to God. Does that sound like free will? That's one of Calvinist's main voice, and that's what he says. Let's hear from the man himself, John Calvin. John Calvin writes in his book, Institutes, Book 2, Chapter 2, when the Spirit describes men under the term darkness, he declares them void of all power of spiritual intelligence. You don't even have the power of spiritual intelligence. You are deader than a doornail, deader than a doorknob. He says this. If John Calvin again, this is a second quote. If we can no more bear fruit of ourselves than a vine can bud when rooted up and deprived of moisture, there is no longer any room to do what is the aptitude of our nature is for good. There is no aptitude, there is no inkling. Like Matt says, we are touched by sin. Well, does the Bible teach us? We know men can be wrong and men have stated many false ideas through the years. But what does the Bible say? Well, there's passages that the Calvinists would point to that says we are totally unable, um, like John 8:34. Jesus answered them, most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave of sin. See, you're a slave to sin, you can't do anything but sin, and you won't. Romans 8 is a big proof text. Romans 8:8. So then, those who are in the flesh cannot please God. Doesn't that sound like total inability? You can't do nothing. You can't please God. You're in the flesh. Well, back up to the context. Verse 5. For those who live according to the flesh, this is a lifestyle. Those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because The carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, nor indeed can be. So then, that's the conclusion. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God. See, Paul is saying in Romans 8, if you live with a fleshly mindset, you cannot please God. Verse 5, he says, those who live according to the flesh have already set their minds there. And he says, if you set your mind like that, it is death. Now, we're going to have more to say on Romans 8 in a couple weeks in this live stream. So join us there. But this is not a proof text. Paul is simply saying those who live according to the flesh, those who set their minds on things of the flesh, cannot please God. And so there is an inability here, but it's not from birth, it's not from a corrupted nature, it is from setting your mind on things of the flesh. Romans 3 9 through 12 is another proof text. Romans 3 9 through 12 says this. Here's another Calvinist proof text. What then? Are we better than they? Not at all. For we have previously charged both Jews and Greeks that they are all under sin. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. See, total inability, no one is righteous. Keep reading. There is none who understands, there is none who seeks after God. Look at that next phrase. They have turned aside. Not they were born aside, not that they inherited the state of being aside. No, they have turned aside, they have together become unprofitable. There is none who does good, no, not one. Their tongue is an open tomb. The poison of wrath is under their lips. Whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace they have not known. And there is no fear of God before their eyes. So yes, Romans 3 9 says there's none righteous, no, not one. But it's because they have not sought after God. They turned aside. They become unprofitable. They're not doing good. It says nothing about a corrupted nature. That is being inserted into the text. So Romans 8 doesn't teach it. That talks about the carnally minded man. Romans 3 doesn't teach it because that talks about how Jew and Gentile have both turned aside and become unprofitable, not that they were born that way. Well, one more proof text. Ephesians 2 1 through 3 they'll use. And you he made alive who were dead in trespasses and sins, and in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience, among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the others. They would say, see, Paul clearly says we were dead in sins. We were walking. And what do they say? A dead body can't do anything. And then they'll point to verse 3, which says we're by nature. See, our very human nature makes us children of wrath. Well, if you look at that word nature, one of the definitions is a mode of feeling and acting, which by long habit has become nature. See, this is not something that they were just born into. No, this is something they became by long habit. Here in verse 2, he says, in which you once walked according to the course of this world. Paul is telling the Ephesians, when you were living this way, you were by nature, by your habits, children of wrath. So now I don't believe uh, total depravity is taught anywhere in Scripture. It's not taught in Romans 8, in Romans 3, Ephesians 2, or John 8. But instead, we turn aside. We become unprofitable. And so, no, friends, total depravity is not true. If you like the content, please like, share, and subscribe so that you won't miss a upload. We're gonna try and be more consistent with these uploads, uploading every week and going live every other week. So make sure you subscribe. And remember, friends, theology matters. I'll see you next week.